Late August 1947, and I was standing outside Briggs Mill watching something that'd haunt me till my dying day. Two girls tied to a loading post like animals waiting for slaughter. The older one, couldn't have been more than 19, had rope burns bleeding through her wrists, mouth open in a silent scream that never came. Her little sister was begging Deputy Hutchins to show mercy, but mercy ain't something men like Sam Briggs understand. Half the town stood there watching. Some laughed, most just looked away, same as they always did when Briggs decided to collect on what he was owed. I was 58 years old, hadn't been in a real fight since the war, had a good job, a roof over my head, and enough sense to mind my own business. But something in those rope burns told me if I walked away, I wouldn't be able to live with myself come morning. By dawn the next day, I'd either be a free man or a dead one. I reckon that's where this whole mess started. Late August, 1947. Millbrook County, Tennessee. I'd been foreman at Briggs Mill for near about 11 years, knew every saw blade, every board foot of lumber that went through those gates. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was how deep the rot ran in Samuel Briggs's soul. It was coming on towards 7 o'clock that Thursday evening. Most of the boys had already cleared out, headed home to supper and their families. I was doing my final walkthrough, checking the saws were locked down proper, when I heard it. Not quite a scream, more like the sound a wounded deer makes when it knows the end is coming. I came around the corner of the lumber shed and stopped dead. Two girls tied to the loading post. Young women, really. The older one had her hands bound so tight, the hemp rope had cut clean through to the bone. Blood was dripping down her fingers onto the dusty ground. She kept opening her mouth, trying to make sounds, but nothing came out except those animal noises that made my chest hurt. The younger one, couldn't have been more than 16, was crying something fierce, begging Deputy Roy Hutchins to let them go. "Please, sir, please, we'll get the money. Our daddy's coming back any day now with work. Please don't do this to us." Deputy Hutchins stood there with his thumbs hooked in his gun belt, face blank as a stone wall. Behind him, Samuel Briggs leaned against his new Packard, black as sin and twice as expensive, smoking a cigar that probably cost more than I made in a week. "Your daddy ain't coming back, girl." Briggs flicked ash onto the ground like he was discussing the weather. "Been 2 months since he skipped town owing me $300. Way I see it, you two can work off that debt at the house. My housekeeper's getting old. Could use some younger help around the place." I knew what housekeeper meant when a man like Briggs said it. We all knew. The whole county knew what happened to girls who went to work in that house. My feet started moving before my brain caught up. "Mr. Briggs?" My voice came out rougher than I intended, like I'd swallowed gravel. All three of them turned to look at me. "What's going on here?" Hutchins's hand dropped to his gun. "This ain't your concern, Woody. Just collecting on a legitimate debt. Legal and proper." "Don't look proper to me." I walked closer, real slow and deliberate. "Looks like two scared girls tied up against their will." Briggs smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. Never did with him. "Careful, Tate. You like that foreman job? You like having a roof over your head? A man your age, you ain't gonna find work easy if I put the word out." I looked at the older girl, really looked at her. Even through the tears and terror, even with the blood and the rope burns, there was something in her eyes that reminded me of my Emma. That same fierce dignity that said, "I'm still a person, even if you treat me like property." And then I thought about my little Sarah. 7 years old when the fever took her. If she'd lived, she'd be about this girl's age now. "I'll pay the debt." The words hung in the air like smoke. Briggs laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You? You ain't got $300, Woody. Hell, you probably ain't got 30 in that sad little bank account of yours. I got my truck, got some savings Emma left me, and I got time to work it off however long it takes." I stepped closer to the girls, close enough to see the older one's wrists shaking from pain. "But these girls ain't property, and they sure as hell ain't going to your house." The silence that followed felt like forever. Even the cicadas seemed to hold their breath. Finally, Briggs nodded to Hutchins. "Cut 'em loose." I helped the older girl stand. She was trembling like a leaf in a storm, couldn't get her legs steady under her. The younger one wrapped her arms around her sister, both of them crying now, but different tears than before. As I was leading them toward my truck, Hutchins leaned in close, close enough I could smell the tobacco on his breath. "Briggs, don't forget, old man. And neither do I." He smiled, showing yellow teeth. "You just signed your own death warrant." I reckon I had, but right then, with those two girls shaking behind me and the sun dropping below the tree line, I couldn't bring myself to care. My place wasn't much to look at. Two-bedroom shotgun house at the end of Maple Street, paint peeling like old sunburn, front porch sagging on one side where the foundation had started to settle, but it was paid for. Emma and I had scraped together every penny for 15 years to own it outright. After she passed, it was all I had left of her. That and the wedding ring I kept in my shirt pocket. I got the girls inside and locked the door. Knew it wouldn't mean much if Briggs or Hutchins decided to come calling, but it made me feel like I was doing something. "Sit." I pointed to the kitchen table. "I'll get the first aid kit." The younger one helped her sister into a chair. That's when I noticed the older girl's hands moving. Quick, precise gestures I didn't understand. Sign language. I'd seen it once before, years back, but never learned it proper. "She's asking if you're gonna hurt us," the younger one said, her voice so small I almost didn't hear it. I stopped dead. Got down on one knee so I was eye level with the older girl. Looked her straight in the face. "No, ma'am, I ain't gonna hurt you. I promise you that, on my late wife's grave." Something shifted in her expression. Not quite trust, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. I cleaned the rope burns best I could with iodine and clean rags. The older girl, Clara May, I learned her name was, she didn't make a sound the whole time, even though I knew it had to hurt like hell. Just watched my hands with those dark, serious eyes. While I worked, the younger one, Jesse, told me their story in fits and starts. Father had been a good man once, worked odd jobs, kept food on the table. But after their mama died 2 years back from pneumonia, he'd started drinking heavy, borrowed money from Briggs for the doctor bills, then borrowed more when that wasn't enough, then disappeared 3 weeks ago, leaving the girls alone in a rented room at Henderson's boarding house with nothing but the clothes on their backs. "We ain't been back there in 4 days," Jessie said, staring at her hands. "Couldn't pay the rent." "Jesus Christ," I rubbed my face. "You been sleeping where?" "Old barn behind the Baptist church. Reverend Glenn, he knew we was there. Brought us some bread once, but he said he couldn't do nothing more. Said Briggs owns the church mortgage." That hit me harder than it should have. Glenn and I had known each other 20 years, sat at my kitchen table after Emma's funeral, and he'd let two girls sleep in a barn. "You'll stay here," I said. "I got a spare room. Used to be." I stopped, cleared my throat. "It's empty now. You can use it." "We can't pay you," Jessie whispered. "I ain't asking you to." "But why?" Her eyes were desperate to understand. "Why would you help us? You don't even know us." How do you explain to a 16-year-old girl that sometimes a man sees something that cracks open all the grief he's been holding inside for 3 years? That I couldn't save Emma from that cancer, couldn't afford the specialist in Memphis, that my little Sarah would have been about Clara May's age if that fever hadn't taken her. "Because it's the right thing," I said finally. "And that's reason enough." We ate a quiet supper, cold beans straight from the can, cornbread I'd baked 2 days prior. Nothing fancy. Clara May kept watching me between bites, like she was trying to figure out if I was real or some kind of trap. Can't say I blamed her none. Around 9 o'clock, I got them settled in Sarah's old room. Found some of Emma's night clothes in the cedar chest. Hurt to see them worn again, but I figured Emma would have approved. She always did have a soft spot for strays and lost things. I was just pouring myself a small whiskey, needed something to steady my nerves, when I saw the lights through the front window. Torches, 6 of them, maybe 7, moving up Maple Street slow and deliberate, like a funeral procession. I set down the glass and reached for the rifle above the doorframe. They were coming for us. I stepped out onto the porch with the rifle across my knees. Didn't aim it, didn't even put my finger near the trigger. Just held it there where everyone could see it, letting them know this wasn't going to be as easy as they thought. 8 men, maybe 10. Hard to count with the torchlight dancing shadows across their faces. Deputy Hutchins led the pack, thumbs still hooked in that gun belt like he was some kind of cowboy out of a picture show. Behind him, I recognized faces. Tom Brewster from the mill, Charlie Wade, who ran the feed store, even young Danny Pierce, who couldn't have been more than 22. Men I'd worked with, drank with, men whose kids I'd seen grow up. Evenin' Woody. Hutchins stopped at the bottom of my porch steps. We got a situation here needs resolvin'. Don't look like a situation to me, I said. Looks like a mob. Now don't be like that, Charlie Wade spoke up from the back, not quite meeting my eyes. We're just here to talk sense into you. Those girls belong to Mr. Briggs by legal right. Debt collection. All proper and official. Girls ain't property, Charlie. Thought you knew that, what with having 3 daughters of your own. That hit home. Charlie's face went red in the torchlight, but he didn't answer. Hutchins took a step closer. You gonna shoot all of us, old man, 'cause that's what it's gonna take. We ain't leaving without those girls. I looked at each face in that crowd, really looked, saw the shame in some of them, saw the anger in others, saw men who owed Briggs money, owed him favors, owed him their livelihoods. Don't have to shoot all of you, I said quiet. Just have to shoot you, Roy. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Behind me, I heard the front door creak open. Jesse's voice, small and scared. Mr. Tate? Stay inside, girl. But Clara May came out anyway. Walked right past me, stood at the edge of the porch with her bandaged wrists held out in front of her like evidence in a trial. The torchlight caught the blood-stained gauze, made it look almost black. She pointed at her wrists, then at Hutchins, then made a gesture I didn't need no translation for. She drew her finger across her throat. Girl can't even talk, someone muttered from the crowd. Probably simple in the head. She ain't simple. Tom Brewster's voice cut through the murmur. He pushed his way to the front, stood beside Hutchins, but not quite with him. She's deaf, and she's got more sense than all of us put together, seems like. Tom looked up at me. We'd worked side by side for 7 years. I'd helped him bury his wife when the influenza took her back in '43. This ain't right, Woody, he said. But neither is what you're doing. Briggs owns half this county. You can't fight that. Nobody can. So we just let him take these girls, let him do to them what we all know he's gonna do? My voice came out harder than I meant. When'd you become the kind of man who looks away, Tom? His face twisted up. For a second, I thought he might take a swing at me. Then he just shook his head. I got 4 kids at home. I can't lose my job. Can't lose my house. I'm sorry, Woody. I truly am. But I got responsibilities. So do I. I stood up, rifle still across my knees. She ain't property. Not while I'm breathing. The crowd shifted. Some looked at their feet. Young Danny Pierce actually backed up a step. Then Clara May did something I'll never forget. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Just for a second. Her fingers were cold and shaken, but the squeeze was firm, deliberate. She was thanking me. This girl who'd been tied up like an animal 6 hours ago, who had every reason to trust no man ever again. She was thanking me for standing up. I ain't dying for this. Tom turned away from the porch. I ain't dying for Briggs, and I ain't dying to make myself feel righteous. You boys do what you want. I'm going home. 2 others followed him. Then another. The mob was fracturing, breaking apart like ice in spring thaw. Hutchins watched them go, his jaw working like he was chewing gravel. Finally, he spat on the ground. This ain't over, Tate. They left. The torches disappeared back down Maple Street, and the night got quiet again, except for the crickets and the pounding of my heart. I was just starting to breathe normal when I heard the car engine. A black Packard rolled up to my gate. Samuel Briggs stepped out, holding a stack of official-looking papers. Court order, Woody. Marshal's coming at dawn to take you in. Hope you enjoyed your last night of freedom. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat at the kitchen table, staring at those court papers by lamplight. They were legitimate, too, signed by Judge Parker himself. Harboring fugitives, interference with legal debt collection, threatening an officer of the law. Each charge carried 6 months to 2 years. Stack them together, and I was looking at 5, maybe 6 years in the state prison. And once I was gone, those girls would go straight back to Briggs. Around 1 in the morning, I heard a truck engine cut off down the street. Footsteps on gravel. My hand went to the rifle, but then came a soft knock. 3 taps. Pause. 2 more taps. Doc Callahan's signal from the war. I opened the door a crack. Doc stood there in the darkness, medical bag in hand, looking older than his 63 years. You gonna let me in, or should I just stand out here till Hutchins drives by? I let him in. Doc set his bag on the table, looked at those court papers, then looked at me. You're in a whole heap of trouble, Woody. Tell me something I don't know. Briggs came to see me this evening, wanted me to sign papers saying you've gone mentally unstable since Emma died. Said if I did, he'd forgive that loan on my clinic. If I didn't, Doc rubbed his face. He's gonna foreclose. I'll lose everything. My stomach dropped. Doc, I can't ask you to. I ain't signing nothing. Doc's voice was hard as iron. And before you start thanking me or feeling guilty, you should know why. He sat down heavy in Emma's old chair, took a long breath. 5 years ago, I had a daughter, Rebecca. Prettiest girl you ever saw, smart as a whip, planning to go to nursing school in Knoxville. His voice cracked. Briggs offered her a job as his secretary. Good pay, he said. Respectable work. I was proud of her. I already knew where this was going and my chest got tight. Took 3 months before she came home with bruises she couldn't explain. 6 months before she stopped coming home at all. 8 months before they found her in the river with stones in her pockets. Doc's hands were shaking. Coroner ruled it accidental drowning. Everyone knew better. Everyone looked away. Jesus, Doc. I didn't know. Nobody knew. I made sure of that. Took the shame, buried it deep, told myself I was protecting her memory. He looked at me with eyes full of old pain. But I wasn't protecting nothing. I was just a coward, same as all of us. He reached into his medical bag and pulled out a roll of cash. Had to be $300. This is everything I got that ain't in the bank. And I know a woman, Cherokee elder named Martha Crowder, lives about 15 miles north, just over the county line. She runs a kind of informal shelter on tribal land. Girls who got nowhere else to go. Briggs can't touch 'em there. Why would she help us? Because I helped deliver her granddaughter 20 years ago when no white doctor would touch a Cherokee woman. She owes me. More importantly, she's got a good heart. Doc stood up. I'm going to tell Hutchins I sedated you, that you're resting comfortably, buying us time. You got till dawn, maybe 5 hours, to get those girls to Martha's place. What about you? Your clinic? Let it burn. Doc's smile was bitter. Should have burned 5 years ago when Rebecca died. Would have saved me a lot of sleepless nights. We loaded the girls into Doc's truck, less suspicious than mine, which everyone in town knew by sight. I laid flat in the truck bed under a tarp that smelled like horse medicine and old hay. Clara May squeezed my hand once before the tarp came down. In the darkness, I felt her press something into my palm. A small wooden cross on a string, warm from being around her neck. The truck rumbled to life. Through a gap in the tarp, I watched the stars slide by overhead, listened to the tires crunch gravel, and prayed harder than I had since Emma's funeral. We made it maybe 2 miles before I felt the truck slow down. Stop. Hutchins's voice, loud and suspicious. Little late for a house call, ain't it, Doc? Medical samples for the county lab in Knoxville. Time sensitive. You know how it is. That so? Footsteps coming closer. Mind if I take a look in the back? My hand found the rifle under the tarp. If Hutchins pulled back that canvas, this whole thing was going to end bloody. Roy. Doc's voice went cold as winter. You really want to be the man who delayed urgent medical transport? You really want to explain to Judge Parker why those blood samples spoiled because you were playing games? Long silence. So long I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Get out of here, Hutchins finally said. And Doc, tell Woody I'll see him at dawn. Martha Crowder's place sat on a rise about 3 miles off the main road. Cluster of small cabins arranged in a half circle, vegetable garden out front, chickens scratching in the yard. Simple, quiet, safe. Or at least as safe as anywhere could be with Samuel Briggs hunting us. Martha herself came out onto the porch before we'd even killed the engine. Woman had to be pushing 70, but she moved like someone 20 years younger. Silver hair braided down her back, eyes sharp as broken glass. She took one look at Clara May's bandaged wrists and nodded. They stay, Both of them. No questions, no hesitation, just pure, simple decency. Doc handled the introductions while I helped the girls out of the truck. Jessie was half asleep on her feet, exhausted from fear and adrenaline wearing off. But Clara May, she was wide awake, taking in everything. The cabins, the garden, the way Martha moved with quiet authority. "There's stew on the stove," Martha said, "and clean beds. You girls go on inside with my granddaughter. She'll get you settled." After they went in, Martha turned those sharp eyes on me. "You the one who stood up to Briggs?" "Yes, ma'am." "Fool thing to do." "Yes, ma'am." "Good." She smiled then. "Just a hint. World needs more fools like you. Come dawn, you best be gone from here. Briggs finds you on my land, even I can't protect you. But the girls, they're under Cherokee jurisdiction now. Old treaty law from 1835. Never been repealed, just ignored. I can make it stick if I have to." Doc looked surprised. "Martha, I didn't know." "Most people don't. White folks forgot about us after they pushed us west. But some of us stayed. Kept the old ways alive." She looked at me. "That older girl, Clara May, you know who her mama was?" "No, ma'am." "Sarah Crowder, my sister's daughter." Martha's voice went soft. "Worked for Briggs back in 28. Beautiful girl, proud. When she came back pregnant, wouldn't say who the father was. Just took what money she had and disappeared into Georgia. Heard she died 2 years back." The pieces started fitting together in my head, sharp and painful. "Briggs," I said. "Can't prove it. But I know my niece. She wouldn't have run unless she had reason to be scared." Martha's jaw set hard. "That girl in there is blood. My blood. Which means under Cherokee law, I got rights. Can adopt her and her sister both if they'll have me." "Would that protect them?" "From debt collection?" "Yes." "From a man like Briggs?" She shook her head. "That? I don't know." I couldn't sleep, so I sat on Martha's porch watching the stars fade toward morning. Heard the cabin door creak open. Clara May came out, wrapped in a quilt, bare feet silent on the wood planks. She sat down beside me without a word, just close enough our shoulders almost touched. For a long while we just sat there, comfortable silence. Then she pulled out a piece of chalk and a small slate board, child's writing tools, probably borrowed from Martha's granddaughter. She wrote, "Why?" I looked at that single word for a long time. How do you explain to someone that you're tired of being the man who looks away? That you've spent 3 years drowning in grief and guilt, and helping her was the first time you felt like yourself since Emma died? I took the chalk. My writing was clumsy, never got past 8th grade, but I wrote, "Right thing." She shook her head, wrote, "You lost everything." I wrote, "Not everything." She stared at those words. Then, slow and deliberate, she reached over and took my hand. Not a squeeze this time, just held it. Her palm was warm and rough from work, fingers calloused but gentle. We sat like that till the sun started coming up, painting the sky pink and gold. Then we heard the truck engine. Tom Brewster's pickup came rattling up the dirt road, moving fast, too fast. He jumped out before it even stopped completely, hat in his hands, face pale. "Woody. Jesus, Woody, I'm sorry." "I tried to warn you sooner, but—" "What happened?" "Your house. Briggs burned it last night. Told the marshal you did it yourself for the insurance money. There's a warrant. Federal now. They're saying you kidnapped those girls across state lines." He looked sick. "And that ain't even the worst part." Clara May's hand tightened on mine. "Briggs found out about Martha, about the Cherokee law angle. He's calling in favors from the state capitol. Senator Hayes owes him money, lots of it. They're going to challenge Martha's jurisdiction, get a judge to rule the old treaties don't apply no more." "How long do we have?" Tom swallowed hard. "Judge Parker's holding an emergency hearing this afternoon, 3 o'clock. If Martha can't prove her claim—" He didn't finish, didn't have to. "They're coming for all of us." I told Martha and the girls to stay inside. Whatever was coming, I'd face it first. Been 60 years on this earth, 20 in the war, 11 under Briggs's thumb, 3 alone in that empty house. If today was the day it all came due, at least I'd meet it standing up. Tom left to get back before anyone noticed he was gone. The sun climbed higher, 9 o'clock came and went. Then 10. The heat built up thick and heavy, the kind that makes your shirt stick to your back and your thoughts run slow as molasses. Around 11, I saw the dust cloud coming up the road. Not Briggs's Packard, not the marshal's car either. A beat-up Ford truck, primer gray, moving steady but not fast. It pulled up to Martha's gate and sat there idling for a minute before the engine cut off. Deputy Roy Hutchins stepped out. My hand went to the rifle leaning against the porch rail. Every muscle in my body tensed up like a spring wound too tight. Hutchins held up both hands, showing they were empty. No gun belt. No badge neither. I could see the outline where it normally sat, but his shirt was bare. "I'm alone," he called out. "And I ain't here to arrest nobody." "Then why are you here?" He walked closer, slow and careful, like approaching a spooked horse. Up close, I could see he looked like hell, eyes red-rimmed, hadn't shaved, shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. "Can we talk? Just you and me?" I didn't lower the rifle. "Talk." Hutchins looked back at his truck, then at the ground, then finally at me. "I got a sister, younger than me by 8 years. Margaret. Maggie, we called her." His voice was rough. "She was 17 when Briggs offered her a job at his house. Cleanin', he said. Good money for a girl with no education." I felt my chest go tight. She lasted 4 months before she tried to run. Briggs had me bring her back. Told me it was legal. Said she'd signed a contract, owed him money for room and board. Hutchins's hands were shaking. I believed him. Or I told myself I did. I don't know anymore. Where is she now? County asylum. Been there 6 years. Won't talk. Won't eat unless they force her. Just sits and rocks and stares at nothing. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Doctor says her mind broke. Says whatever happened in that house, she couldn't carry it. The silence stretched out between us like barbed wire. Why are you telling me this? Because when I saw those rope burns on that girl's wrists yesterday, he stopped, swallowed hard. I saw Maggie, saw what she looked like that day I dragged her back to Briggs's house, and I realized I'd been seeing Maggie in every girl's face for 6 years, and I just kept looking away. So what changed? You didn't look away. Hutchins met my eyes. You're just some old widower with nothing to gain and everything to lose, and you stood up anyway? Made me realize I've been wearing this badge for a man who destroyed my sister, and I called it law. He reached into his pocket. I tensed, but he just pulled out a small leather notebook. I've been keeping records, 3 years' worth. Every girl Briggs brought to that house. Every debt he fabricated. Every time he told me to look the other way while he collected. He held it out. Names, dates, amounts. Enough to bury him if an honest judge ever saw it. I didn't take it. Not yet. Why now? Why not 3 years ago? 6 years ago? Because I was a coward. His voice broke. Still am, probably. But maybe I can be a coward who does one right thing before it's too late. Martha's door opened. She came out, followed by Clara May and Jessie. Clara May stared at Hutchins like she was seeing a ghost, and maybe she was. The man who'd tied her to that post. The man who'd stood by while Briggs threatened her life. Hutchins looked at her. Then, slow and deliberate, he got down on his knees in the dirt. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know that don't fix nothing. I know sorry don't give you back what was took. But I'm gonna try to make it right, if it's the last thing I do." Clara May looked at me. I didn't know what to tell her. Forgiveness ain't something you can force, and God knows Hutchins didn't deserve it easy. But then she did something that surprised us all. She walked over and touched his shoulder. Just once, brief, then went back inside. Hutchins broke down crying right there in Martha's yard. I took the notebook from his hand, flipped through it. Page after page of evidence, dates, names, details that made my stomach turn. "There's a hearing at 3 o'clock, I said. "I know. I'm supposed to testify against you, against Martha's claim." He stood up, wiped his face. "But I ain't gonna. I'm gonna tell Judge Parker everything. Every last detail. Briggs will kill you." "Probably." He smiled, bitter and broken. "But at least Maggie will know I finally did right by her." Martha stepped forward. Young man, you're gonna need a place to hide till that hearing. They can't testify if they kill you first. Just then, a car came screeching up the road. Not Briggs's Packard, but the marshal's black sedan, moving fast and urgent, dust boiling up behind it like smoke. Marshal Wade Jennings stepped out of that sedan with his hand on his gun. Federal marshal, 20 years experience. Face like carved granite. He'd served papers on bootleggers, bank robbers, and men twice as mean as Samuel Briggs, and right now, he was looking at me like I was public enemy number one. Elwood Tate, you're under arrest for kidnapping across state lines. His voice carried across Martha's yard like a judge's gavel. Federal offense. Girls were born in Georgia. You brought 'em to Tennessee against their legal guardian's wishes. Legal guardian? I couldn't help but laugh, bitter and harsh. Briggs ain't their guardian. He's a— Save it for Judge Parker. Jennings pulled out handcuffs. Emergency hearing's been moved up. 1 o'clock. You got about 90 minutes before you're either a free man or headed to federal prison for 20 years. Hutchins stepped forward. Marshal, I got evidence that— I know who you are, deputy, and I know whose pocket you're in. Jennings's eyes were cold. You'll get your chance to speak at the hearing, if Judge Parker lets you. Now step aside. They took me in the marshal's car. Hutchins followed in his truck with the girls and Martha. The whole way back to town, all I could think about was that federal prison number. 20 years. I'd be 78 if I survived it. More likely, I'd die in a cell, and those girls would end up right back where they started. The courthouse was packed. Seems word had spread fast. Half of Millbrook County crammed into that courtroom, some curious, some hungry for justice, most just wanting to see how the story ended. Samuel Briggs sat in the front row, dressed in a three-piece suit that probably cost more than my house was worth before he burned it. Smiled at me when I walked in, like we were old friends meeting for coffee. Judge Parker took the bench at exactly 1 o'clock. He was pushing 80, had been on that bench since before I was born. Everyone knew he played poker with Briggs every Thursday night. Everyone knew who owned who. This is a preliminary hearing to determine if there's sufficient cause to bind Mr. Tate over for federal trial, Parker said, his voice thin and reedy. Mr. Briggs, state your case. Briggs stood up, all false dignity and righteous anger. Told the court about the debt, the legal papers, how I'd violently interfered with lawful collection. Showed documents, real ones too, all signed and notarized, made it sound like he was the victim and I was some kind of vigilante who'd stolen his property. Those girls were offered honest work to settle their father's debt, Briggs said, smooth as silk. Mr. Tate filled their heads with lies, kidnapped them in the night, and fled across county lines. This is a clear case of— Your Honor. Martha stood up from the back. Every head in the courtroom turned. I got something to say. Mrs. Crowder, you're out of order. Sit down. I will not sit down. Martha walked forward, her spine straight as a rifle barrel. That girl, Clara May, she's my niece's daughter, my blood. Under the Treaty of New Akota, Article 12, Cherokee citizens retain rights to family custody in matters of debt servitude. Parker's face went red. That treaty hasn't been recognized by this court in over 100 years. Don't make it invalid. Just makes you ignorant of the law. Martha pulled out her own papers, old, yellowed with age, but official. My niece, Sarah Crowder, was registered Cherokee. Her daughter inherits that status. I'm invoking traditional adoption rights under tribal law. The courtroom erupted, people shouting, Briggs on his feet protesting, Judge Parker banging his gavel like it was a hammer and the world was a nail needin' fixin'. Order! I will have order! Parker's voice cracked. I don't care what some dusty old treaty says. The law is clear. Which law? A new voice cut through the chaos. Everyone turned. A man in a pressed suit stood at the back of the courtroom. Black leather briefcase, wire-rimmed glasses. Looked like a schoolteacher, but his eyes were sharp as broken glass. My name is Lawrence Whitfield. I'm an attorney with the Indian Rights Association operating out of Nashville. I'm here to inform this court that as of 9 o'clock this morning, the Cherokee Nation has formally recognized Clara May and Jesse Dawson as tribal members. He walked forward, set papers on the judge's bench. Under federal law, the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, this court has no jurisdiction over tribal adoption proceedings. Parker looked at those papers like they were poison. This is highly irregular. What's irregular is this court ignoring 100 years of treaty law to benefit a man with known criminal associations. Whitfield looked straight at Briggs. I have affidavits from 12 women who worked for Mr. Briggs under similar debt arrangements. All 12 describe conditions that violate Tennessee labor law, federal anti-trafficking statutes, and basic human decency. The courtroom went dead silent. Briggs stood up, his face gone white. That's slander. I'll sue you for every— Please do. I'd love to depose you under oath. Whitfield smiled, cold and professional. Now, Your Honor, unless you want federal investigators crawling through every case you've presided over for the last 20 years, I suggest you recognize Cherokee jurisdiction and release Mr. Tate immediately. Parker's hands shook on his gavel, looked at Briggs, looked at Whitfield, looked at me. Case dismissed. Mr. Tate, you're free to go. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, just stood there like a man who'd been given back his life and didn't know what to do with it. Then Hutchins stood up, holding that leather notebook high. Your Honor, before this court adjourns, I got testimony to give about Samuel Briggs, and I ain't stopping till every last word is on the record. Judge Parker tried to shut down the hearing. Deputy Hutchins, this case is dismissed. Whatever you have to say is irrelevant. It's relevant to the 12 federal charges I'm filing against Samuel Briggs. Whitfield's voice cut through like a blade. And if Your Honor obstructs a federal witness, I'll have marshals from Knoxville here by sundown. Parker's gavel hand went limp. He sank back in his chair like a balloon losing air. Hutchins walked to the front of the courtroom, set that leather notebook on the witness stand, and put his hand on the Bible without being asked. Go ahead, Deputy, Whitfield said. My name is Roy Eugene Hutchins. I've been deputy in Millbrook County for 8 years. And for 6 of those years, I've been helping Samuel Briggs commit crimes against women and girls. His voice shook, but he didn't stop. Started in 1941. Girl named Rebecca Callahan. Briggs said she owed him money for nursing school tuition. Brought her to work at his house. 3 months later, she drowned herself in the river. I heard Doc Callahan make a sound, half sob, half gasp, from somewhere behind me. After that, there was Margaret Hutchins, my sister. Roy's hands gripped the edge of the witness stand so hard his knuckles went white. Then Sarah Llewellyn, then Emma Sykes, then Caroline Wade. He opened the notebook. 12 names total. All told the same story. All paid off or threatened into silence. All broken by what happened in that house. The courtroom was quiet as a graveyard. I got dates, got amounts, got witnesses who'll testify if given protection. Hutchins looked straight at Briggs, and I got one more thing. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small tin box, opened it. Inside was a key. This is the key to Briggs's private office at the mill, the one nobody's allowed in. His smile was bitter. I made a copy 2 years ago, and last night I let myself in, found files, ledgers, photographs he took of those girls for insurance, he called it. His voice went hard. Enough evidence to put him away for life if this court's got the stones to do it. Briggs shot to his feet. This is a setup. That key is fake. Those files are forged, and this traitor is clearly working with Tate to— Sit down, Samuel. Everyone turned. Pastor Glenn stood up from the middle pews. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. He looked 10 years older than he had at the mob gathering 2 nights ago. Don't, Briggs warned. Glenn, think about what you're doing. Think about your son's debt, your mortgage. I am thinking about it, Glenn's voice cracked. Been thinking about nothing else since I testified against Woody yesterday, since I stood in front of God in this court and lied through my teeth. The air went out of the room. Your Honor, I need to correct my testimony from yesterday. Glenn walked forward like a man climbing to the gallows. I said Woody Tate showed signs of mental instability. I said he talked about hearing his dead daughter's voice. I said I feared he might harm himself or others. He stopped in front of me, couldn't meet my eyes. Every word was a lie. Samuel Briggs told me exactly what to say. threatened to foreclose on my church and put my son in prison for gambling debts if I didn't. I just stared at him. 20 years of friendship. 20 years of Sunday dinners and shared grief, and believing this man was good. I'm sorry, Woody. Glenn's voice broke. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to stand with you when it mattered. You stood with the mob at my door, I said quiet. You watched Briggs tie those girls up and did nothing. You knew what he was, and you took his money anyway. I know. Tears ran down his face. I know, and I got no excuse. I was scared. I was weak. I chose my comfort over what was right, same as half this town. He looked at the courtroom. Same as most of you sitting here right now. Tom Brewster stood up. He's right. I knew. We all knew. Charlie Wade stood next. I got 3 daughters at home, and I still looked away. One by one, men rose from their seats. Men who'd carried torches to my door. Men who'd testified for Briggs. Men who'd watched girls disappear into that house and told themselves it wasn't their business. We all knew, Tom said, and we all got blood on our hands. Briggs's face went from white to red to purple. You're all turning on me? After everything I've done for this town? I own this town. I own half of you. Not anymore, you don't. Marshal Jennings stepped forward, handcuffs already out. Samuel Briggs, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and about 20 other charges I ain't even counted yet. You got the right to remain silent, and I strongly suggest you use it. As Jennings cuffed him, Briggs looked straight at me. This ain't over, Tate. I got lawyers. I got friends in high places. I'll be out before— No, you won't. Whitfield's voice was cold and final. Because tomorrow morning the Nashville papers are running this story. Every detail, every name, every crime. By noon, you won't have a friend left in the state. They led Briggs out in handcuffs. The courtroom erupted in noise, people talking, crying, some even applauding. I just stood there, feeling like the world had tilted sideways and I was still trying to find my balance. Clara May appeared at my elbow, looked up at me with those dark, serious eyes. Then she did something I'll never forget. She pulled Emma's wedding ring from her pocket, the one I'd kept in my shirt, must have fallen out somewhere along the way, and pressed it back into my hand, closed my fingers around it, squeezed tight. She was telling me, you're still here, you're still you. You did what Emma would have wanted. But then the courthouse door slammed open, and a young man I'd never seen before stood there, gasping for breath. Fire! Briggs's mill is on fire, and there's people trapped inside. The mill was a quarter-mile from the courthouse. We could see the smoke before we got there, black and thick, rising up against the afternoon sky like a funeral shroud. By the time we arrived, half the building was already engulfed, flames chewing through dry timber like it was paper. There's men inside, someone shouted. Night shift was working overtime. I counted faces in the crowd gathering outside. Saw most of the day crew, but Jimmy Ratliff was missing, and old Pete Garrison, and Danny Pierce, the young kid who'd been part of the mob at my door. How many? Marshal Jennings was already organizing people into bucket lines, though everyone knew it was too late to save the building. 3, maybe 4, Tom Brewster said, his face ash gray. They were in the back office doing inventory when it started. The back office, where Hutchins said Briggs kept his files, where all that evidence was stored. I looked at Hutchins. He looked at me. We both understood at the same time. Briggs set this, Hutchins said. Had it planned as backup. Burn the evidence, kill the witnesses, make it look like an accident. He's in your custody, Whitfield said. How could he? Phone call. Jennings's face went hard. I let him make one phone call from the courthouse. Son of a bitch. The flames roared higher. I heard screaming from inside, high and desperate. Jimmy Ratliff. I'd know his voice anywhere. Worked beside him for 7 years. I started walking toward the building. Woody, no. Tom grabbed my arm. I shook him off. I ain't letting anyone else die because of this mess. Not today. Doc Callahan appeared with wet blankets. If you're going in, at least take these. He wrapped one around my shoulders, soaked it from a water bucket. And Woody, don't you dare die in there. You hear me? Don't you dare. I went through the side door, the one the foreman used, the one I'd walked through every day for 11 years. The heat hit me like a physical thing, stole the breath right out of my lungs. Smoke so thick I couldn't see 3 feet ahead. Jimmy! Pete! Danny! I shouted, then choked on the smoke. A hand grabbed my ankle. Pete Garrison collapsed near the office door, barely conscious. I dragged him toward the exit, passed him off to Tom, who'd followed me in against all sense. Two more, Pete gasped. Back office. Doors jammed. Tom and I pushed deeper into the inferno. Found the office door, metal, warped from heat, wedged shut. Through the gap, I could hear Jimmy and Danny pounding from the inside. Stand back. I kicked the door once, twice, 3 times. My bad knee, the one that had bothered me since the war, gave out. I went down hard. Then someone else was there. Hutchins. He had a fire axe, God knows where he found it. Started chopping at the door hinges with strength, born from guilt and determination. The door gave way. Smoke poured out. Jimmy stumbled through, dragging Danny, who wasn't moving. Go! Hutchins shoved them toward me. I gotta get the files. Leave 'em! I grabbed his shirt. That evidence is the only thing that'll keep Briggs locked up. He pulled away, disappeared into the office. The ceiling groaned. Timber cracked like gunshots. I had maybe 5 seconds to decide. Save myself or go after a man who'd spent 6 years doing Briggs's dirty work. Emma's ring was still in my pocket. I felt its weight. Heard her voice clear as day. You know what's right, Elwood Tate. You've always known. I went back in. Found Hutchins on the floor, file box clutched to his chest, pinned under a fallen beam. His leg was twisted wrong, blood spreading across the floorboards. Leave me, he said. Save the files. Shut up. I grabbed the beam, tried to lift it. Couldn't, too heavy. And I wasn't young anymore. Then more hands. Tom, Charlie Wade, even Pastor Glenn, his church clothes covered in ash. Together, we lifted that beam, dragged Hutchins out, got the files, got everyone. We cleared the building 30 seconds before the main support collapsed, and the whole structure came down in a roar of flame and sparks. I sat on the ground, lungs burning, watching everything I'd known for 11 years turn to ash. Clara May knelt beside me, handed me a dipper of water. I drank, coughed, drank again. You could have died, Tom said, standing over me covered in soot and blood and God knows what else. Coulda, I agreed. Didn't. Hutchins was laid out on a stretcher, legs splinted, face pale. Doc Callahan worked on him while Martha kept the crowd back. Before they loaded him in the ambulance, he caught my eye. Why? He asked. Why'd you come back for me? I thought about that. About Emma, about my daughter, about 6 years of looking away and 3 days of standing up. Because that's what we do now, I said. We don't leave people behind. Not anymore. 2 months later. The mill was gone. Just a burned foundation and memories. But Tom Brewster and some of the boys had started talking about rebuilding it as a cooperative, equal shares. No more bosses like Briggs. Hutchins took a plea deal, testified against Briggs in exchange for probation and community service. Last I heard, he was working at Martha's compound, helping repair cabins and teach the kids woodworking. His sister Maggie still wouldn't speak, but sometimes she'd sit and watch him work. Doc said that was progress. Pastor Glenn lost half his congregation. The other half forgave him. He sold the church building to pay off his debts, started holding services in his living room, said it felt more honest that way. Briggs went to federal prison, 25 years, won't see daylight till he's 80-something if he lives that long. As for me, I got a new house. Small cabin on Martha's land, built with help from half the men who'd carried torches to my old door. They worked for free, said it was the least they could do. Clara May and Jesse got officially adopted by Martha under Cherokee law. Judge Parker, shaken in his boots about federal investigators, signed off without a word of protest. The girls were learning traditional crafts, going to school, smiling more each day. On a Sunday in late October, I was sitting on my new porch when Clara May came up the path. She had something in her hands, a wooden picture frame she'd carved herself. Inside was a photograph someone had taken the day of the trial. Me and her and Jesse standing in front of the courthouse. All of us looked exhausted. All of us looked free. She'd burned words into the frame with a hot poker. Family isn't blood. It's who stands when standing costs everything. She handed it to me, then did something she'd never done before. She spoke. The sound was rough, unpracticed, barely more than a whisper, but it was clear enough. "Thank you, Daddy." I broke down right there. Couldn't help it. Held that girl while she held me, both of us crying like the world was brand new. Martha came up the path, followed by Jesse and Doc Callahan and Tom and Charlie, and even Pastor Glenn, all of them carrying food for Sunday dinner. As the sun set over Martha's land, painting the sky gold and red, I looked around at these people, this strange, broken, beautiful family we'd all become. And I finally understood what Emma had been trying to tell me all along. Dignity ain't about what you own. It's about who you are when everything's been taken away, and family ain't about blood. It's about who stands beside you when the whole world's burning down. We'd all lost something, but we'd found each other. And that, I reckon, was worth more than anything Samuel Briggs could ever steal. Now I know some of you sitting there are thinking old Woody was a damn fool. Lost his house, lost his job, nearly lost his life in that fire, all for two girls he didn't even know, and by most measures, you'd be right. I was a fool. But here's what I learned in those 90 days between that Thursday evening and the Sunday I sat on Martha's porch with my new family. Dignity ain't something that can be taken from you. It's something you give away. Every time you look away from injustice, every time you stay silent when you should speak up, every time you choose comfort over conscience, that's when you give away your dignity piece by piece till there ain't nothing left but shame and regret. I gave mine away for 11 years, watched Samuel Briggs destroy lives, told myself it wasn't my business, that I had to protect what little I had left after Emma died. But the night I saw those rope burns on Clara May's wrists, something in me said no more. Was it worth it? Son, I got two daughters now who call me daddy. Got Martha's wisdom across the breakfast table. Got a whole community of folks who found the courage to stand up when it mattered most. Got Tom and Doc and even Roy Hutchins, men who risked everything to do what's right. And I sleep at night, really sleep, for the first time in 3 years. That's worth more than any house or paycheck or reputation ever could be. Now, I ain't saying everyone should throw away their life for strangers. We all got responsibilities, bills to pay, families to feed. I understand that. But I am saying this. There comes a moment in every man's life when he has to choose between safety and soul, between comfort and conscience. And when that moment comes, and it will come, you'll feel it right here, Tap's chest. Deep in your bones where the truth lives. The only question is, what will you do about it? If this story touched something in you, I'd be honored to hear about it. Leave a comment. Let me know where you're listening from. Tell me about a time you had to make that choice. Until next time, may your dignity carry you through the dark times. And may you have the courage to stand up when standing costs everything. This is Woody Tate, signing off. God bless.